Crosby, and you're listening to the Mean Joe Grizzly podcast.
Hey, it's Tom Matthews from Return of the Living Dead and Friday the 13th, Part 6, to name a few, and you're listening to the Mean Joe Grizzly podcast. Enjoy.
Hey guys, Tyler Main here, and you're listening to the Mean Joe Grizzly podcast. Hi, I'm John Russo, screenwriter of Night of the Living Dead. Welcome to the Mean Joe Grizzly podcast. Enjoy.
Let me introduce myself. I'm Joe Grizzly, bitch.
What up, mean militia? I'm Mean Joe Grizzly, and when I'm not trying to solve my twin sister's murder with the help of my thrift shop magic items, or trying to escape a creepy cosmic entity that can't stop smiling, I'm at the Grizzly Cave, watching movies, reading comics, listening to metal, and of course, crushing beers. And on this week's episode, I'm going to be covering the overly recommended and unfortunately overly hyped Oddity, and the superior sequel to the 2022 smash hit Smile. But before we get started, please make sure to follow me on all social media pages, subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts, and subscribe to the YouTube channel by clicking the links in the description below. By doing that, you'll help me continue to talk about all forms of badassery. So let's get started with Oddity. This is Grizzly Grade Reviews. When the wife of a psychiatrist is murdered at their home by one of his former patients, her eccentric blind twin sister becomes suspicious of her death and vows to avenge her sister's death using cursed items from her oddity shop. Oh man, some of y'all are going to hate me for this. And some of y'all probably ain't going to give a shit, but I just want to throw this out there. I was extremely let down by this movie. And I mean extremely. And, you know, it's the horror community's fault. Guys, this year alone, there has been quite a few movies that have been criticized for being overhyped. Maxine, Alien Romulus, In a Violent Nature, and one in particular, Longlegs, have all been crucified for overhype. But the biggest difference between those and this is those movies are actually living up to the hype. Those movies are actually awesome. Now, I'm not going to say that this movie was bad by no means, but man, I was told that everybody's been saying that this is in talks for best horror movie of the year. It's one of the best of the decade. The director is a modern master of horror after only 2 movies. And after seeing it, I can say with full confidence that the large majority of my beloved horror community is 100% smoking crack. Y'all guys are ridiculous, and y'all need to chill. What the fuck, guys? Opinions are like assholes, but damn, y'all got this all wrong. I mean, this ain't even in my top 20 of this year, and it's not even close. And quite frankly, this really reminds me of not quite as bad, but this is almost like The Night House for me. I know a lot of people love The Night House. I think The Night House is a pile of shit, and I don't understand why people like it so much. And this is borderline there. Not quite. I did like this movie, but I didn't love it like y'all fucking did. This is crazy, the hype this movie has gotten. But I don't want to just shit all over this movie. I just wanted to get that out of my system and just let y'all know that y'all need help. This movie is not anywhere close to being one of the top horror films of this year. So let's just talk about it. So first off, I've got to say that the movie, from a cinematography and sound design standpoint, it's immaculate. It's a very good looking movie. It has great sound design to the point that it builds this incredibly creepy atmosphere. That's one thing that the movie does shine at, is building the creepy atmosphere through the sound design and the immaculate cinematography. Like, it's just a good looking movie, and it sounds great. And I like the premise of the story. And I like the twin sister Darcy as a character. I thought it was very interesting having a blind medium using cursed and supernatural items from her oddity shop to try to solve her sister's murder. The problem was the execution, and I thought that also this wooden doll that you see in the trailers and on the posters was creepy as fuck, and very, very effective at adding to that overall creepy atmosphere that I was talking about before. Which, speaking of the atmosphere, it's very well done. It's dark, it's gloomy, and it definitely brings the creep factor. But there are some negatives that, for me, really affected the overall experience that I had watching this film. Starting off is the pacing. It's absolutely horrendous. And I was told that this movie was a slow burn, but I disagree. There is a big difference between a slow burn and pacing issues. The pacing is all over the place in this movie. It starts out slow as fuck, and then periodically throughout the film, it stutters in its pacing. And that's the best way that I can describe it. When we get to the third act, it's really noticeable there. And we get these suspenseful moments, and then the movie just goes absolutely flat and loses all of its momentum. Also, there's one particular effect in the movie that just looks like absolute shit, and it's this effect where it seems like it's a blend of CGI and practical, where you see the image of this ghost face in the darkness, and it looks absolutely awful. That stuck out like a sore thumb, and at that moment in the movie, the atmosphere was really working and making the movie real creepy and uneasy, and it just took me completely out of the movie when that happened. And next, like I said before, the premise of this movie is great, but the way it was executed didn't work for me at all. The movie is presented as like a supernatural murder mystery, but it's not. Not really at all. Instead, it's somewhat of a revenge movie that tells you all the plot midway through and leaves nothing to mystery, nor does it really have any build-up or meaningful conflict. It's all what I'd like to call weak sauce. There's no tension or no suspense built up at all. Even the ending, where they tried to be clever, it just fell flat and had no real resolution or consequence. So for me, those few issues, along with the overhype, just brought this movie down to an average watch with a lot of wasted potential. I don't think it's bad, but it was definitely disappointing, and nowhere close to one of the best horror releases of this year, and my least favorite of all the Shudder releases we've gotten this year so far. It's crazy that on a year where Shudder has released so many like bangers, like, you know, you have In a Violent Nature, Late Night with the Devil, you've got Infested, Stop Motion, you've got all these great movies that definitely are some of the best horror films that's been released this year. And this one got damn near all the attention. The only one that got more attention than this was Late Night with the Devil and In a Violent Nature. This was definitely in third place of, oh man, this is the best horror release of this year. It's nowhere close. It's not even the best out of the releases that Shudder has given us this year. So I just feel like that of all the examples of overhype that we've gotten this year, this is the only one that I think deserves that title. It's just not as great as y'all say it is. It's not awful, but it's just not that great. So for that, Oddity gets a 3 out of 5 and is just Grizzly Grade guaranteed. Check it out on Shudder. Maybe you'll like it more than me. I just thought it was just okay and more frustrating than anything. So now on to a movie that did live up to the hype. Smile 2. Pop megastar Sky Riley is attempting to rebuild her life after her past self-destruction led to her killing a friend and almost losing her life. but her plans for a comeback make a turn for the deadly when she is caught in the curse of a smiling supernatural entity. So when the first film was released a couple of years ago, I didn't really care about it. I was just going to see it because it came out that week. And I walked away surprised with how much I enjoyed it, and it even made my top 25 of that year despite me giving it just a above average rating. I didn't really think it was great until I watched it a second time. I thought that it was derivative of a lot of things, and I always described it as being the best of those early 2000s curse movies like The Ring, The Grudge, and Shudder, and all those. I think that it takes all the best parts of those and perfects them and puts them in this movie. And again, and it was just that was one of the best years in horror in the last 30 years in 2022. We got so many good movies that year, and for Smile to stand out and make my top 25 that year, it's pretty impressive. But I didn't think it needed a sequel. I thought they told a good standalone story with some great gore, good scares, and again, it took all the things about those 90s and early 2000s curse films and perfected them and put them in that movie. And I didn't think it would be effective a second time. And I'm here to tell you I was wrong. I was very wrong. Smile 2 is not only as good as the first film, but in more ways it surpasses it. I'm just going to go ahead and say that it surpasses it. So the sequel picks up 6 days after the events of the first film. So it ties things together really nicely to connect the two films and to segue into this one. And this movie aims for a bigger aspect in everything. The setting, the characters, the situation, all stakes are higher. And everything is turned up a notch. In my opinion, they raise the stakes and the magnitude of the situation to a level that is not too high, but just right. Parker Finn definitely rises to the occasion with this sequel since he was given a bigger budget and more likely they gave him free range to do whatever he wanted. He continued his story and took it into this grander direction very smoothly, and to me, he didn't lose his creative edge at all. The things he did in regards to cinematography and the choices made in regards to the way the entity works was cool. And there were scenes in this movie that honestly had me extremely uncomfortable and had my skin crawling. And those were scenes that didn't involve gore. And speaking of gore, they upped the gore significantly from the last film. This movie has moments where the characters harm themselves, and they were disgusting and unnerving and had me wincing, but I couldn't take my eyes off the screen. And when I say the gore is ruthless, I mean it is ruthless. And the majority of it looked practical. The quality of the creatures effects continues to be great in this movie as well. The entity is one of the most terrifying movie monsters we've gotten in a long time. Just petrifying. I would absolutely be paralyzed if this thing was in front of me in real life. I would literally be shitting my pants and could not move. It's scary as fuck. And I mentioned earlier the scene's about making my skin crawl. I 100% meant that. The scene when the entity presents itself to the lead, all of them are unique and very overwhelming. The way that Parker Finn writes and films these scenes gives you a sense of dread that feels suffocating at times. It's genuinely creepy and unnerving. That's the best way I can put it. But for me, what makes all of this tension and dread possible is the performance by Naomi Scott. Man, she was fantastic. The amount of emotional weight a role like this has must be exhausting. And she just takes it on and delivers in spades. you get to learn the past of the character and how awful of a person she is, to the point that in the beginning you think she is just going through the motions to get her second chance, that she really hasn't changed. But periodically you begin to see that she truly is trying to change, and that she is extremely regretful for her actions, but also that she might not be in complete control of her path even before she is possessed by the entity. And seeing this and her character develop on screen makes you extremely sympathetic towards her. And that's due to how great the character is written and how phenomenal Naomi Scott portrays her. And definitely, it's in the top half of performances this year. The journey and the path to madness brings us to this insane conclusion that people are either going to love or hate. Me personally, I loved it and thought the scale of the climax expands the lore in a grand way. But the lore is something that I wanted to be expanded on a little bit more. I felt that we needed some more info on what the entity is, what's its origin, and why does it do whatever it does. I also think that the runtime is a little much. They could have cut a little bit out of this. Not to say that there's a lot of dead weight or anything. It's just 2 hours and 12 minutes is a lot. And there was some very obvious product placement with a drinking water company that at times went to silly levels. And that's what a lot of people in the horror community are talking about, that specifically, is how Voss Water just blatantly had product placement in this. So now Voss Water is probably going to be the official drinking water of the horror community. But honestly, I'm really excited to see where they go with this franchise, especially after the ending. So those gripes I have, they didn't really affect my experience too much. To me, Smile 2 surpasses the original, and he gets a 4.25 out of 5, and is definitely Grizzly grade guaranteed. It's currently playing in theaters, so go out and see it this week and support this movie. Support horror, guys. And that does it for another episode. Make sure you click the links in the description and subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts, and also follow the YouTube channel so you don't miss any of the content I'm bringing your way. Also, make sure you check out Carl Casey at Whitebat Audio. He is a synthwave master, and his music is being used throughout each episode, so check him out on Apple Music, Spotify, and YouTube. So the only film I know that premieres this week at the theater is Venom: The Last Dance. I'm going to cover that. I'm just not going to cover it right now. It's going to be covered at a later date because I want to focus on putting together the Halloween special. And it's going to be a little bit different than what it normally is every year. It'll be somewhat familiar, but I'm going to tweak some things and make some things a little bit different. I'm going to bring y'all the last section of The Crow in the Grizzly Guide, I promise. I know it has now been probably over a month since the part 2 premiered. Sorry guys, I can't predict hurricanes, nor can I predict my workflow in my personal life. So that's something that unfortunately suffers as a result of that. But I am making some pretty interesting changes coming up soon. I'm currently also revamping the Grizzly Cave to bring y'all more of a live experience to the YouTube channel and to TikTok. So that's something that is probably going to be effective in January. So I hope that everything comes together so I can bring that to y'all as quickly as possible. And I appreciate y'all's continued patience and support. Y'all have no idea how much y'all mean to me and how much I appreciate it. I continue to do this because I love doing this, and I continue to do this because y'all continue to listen to me and watch me. So for that, I am forever grateful. Also, I hope that members of the Mean Militia that were affected by the hurricane, I hope you're alive and well, and I wish you all a fast recovery from this awful disaster. Donate to the Red Cross and stuff, guys, to help out hurricane victims, because someone's got to help them. And if we don't band together as a country to help these people, no one will. But until next time, remember, I'm Joe Grizzly, bitch.